guys, thanks for coming out to our TED Talk. I'm Silas.
I'm Mike.
I'm Aysha. So at our time at the Winooski Library, we were really able to have some great interactions with a lot of different types of students. We found that one of the big takeaways from our time there this semester was that teaching isn't just about curriculum and isn't just about grades and the knowledge of papers and work. We found that a lot of the skills that the students were learning with us and things that we were taking away from students as well were skills that could be applied inside and outside of the school setting. So it was a lot of more non-curriculum, in the school learning skills, but still great either way. I know that one of the first things that we got when we got there, and Julie, who kind of took on our mentor teacher role while we were there, she made the space really inviting. She had this spirit of belonging almost role that she took on right away when she came in, which we noticed an immediate shift while we were there. She allowed this center to kind of be a middle ground for not only us but other students that went there for work help, and within this middle ground we kind of found that students had this place to take on new moratorium than they might not have before because of this belonging that was made between us and Julie. We kind of saw that not only were students experimenting in their roles as being students and having a safe place to do so and feeling that kind of belonging to do so, but we kind of also had the experience to experiment with our roles as an educator, so it was kind of a mutual moratorium thing, I think, that we took on, with understanding that we could kind of get our feet wet with being an educator and teaching these skills, and students could also kind of meet us in that middle ground and get their feet wet with pushing themselves and learning new things without having that pressure to perform that might come in the classroom or at home from parents. There was just no pressure with that, so we found that maybe that could have influenced students to do a lot better and do different techniques than they wouldn't normally have in the classroom, which was really interesting. Along with that, the kind of came Vygotsky's sociocultural theory, which was just interacting with new people, and I think that having this safe space, that this interaction with new people and new surroundings was really an easy way for students to kind of learn from not only each other but kind of from us. I think that we also exemplified really good skills with kind of multitasking while we were there. While we were also the educators, we also acknowledged that we were also students and still learning, and we always had our work out and were kind of pushing through things on our own if we weren't with a student, but we could quickly switch that role to being the educator and understanding that we have to also take on the role of helping other students that were there at the time. So this cognitive autonomy that kind of went both ways between us being educators and helping students, and also still being a student and recognizing that we didn't have the answers to everything, again, was so easy just because of that belonging that we all felt while we were there in this safe space. I know that Mike felt this with a lot of the different students that we met at the center.
Absolutely, Aysha. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And during our tenure as student tutors, we met a handful of students with diverse needs, skills, and outlooks on life. Although we didn't have as much of an opportunity as we'd like to be in their company, to have that time, we still interpreted their presence at the center as an indicator of tremendous courage and self-esteem. These students had gone forward with their questions and had identified themselves as students and as people who are worthy of being heard, being helped, and participating in genuine human connection. By placing themselves in the space which promised to provide them with useful academic and social resources, they had demonstrated either an ability and a willingness to exercise their own autonomy and or the positive influence of an authoritative guardian who sought to see their success through the benefits of socialization. And one thing that was really remarkable that we noticed was the extent to which students pursued their own goals and conjunctively the development of their own respective identities. Some students had even gone so far as to express desire to continue their time at the center, to receive more aid. And one particular instance for reference was particularly expiring, and that was a student who had arranged plans to enter the medical field, whilst also navigating the demanding roles of being both a student as well as a parent. And so in order for us to further facilitate the development of the students, we had integrated into our approaches methods which sought to encourage and maintain self-esteem whilst also promoting easy absorption of more challenging materials that would entail skills like critical thinking. So throughout our time at the center, we were very fortunate to have students seeking help who were generally very kind and receptive to external contributions. So as a result, we didn't have to implement any measures to prevent undesirable behaviors in any way. I can recall one instance where in order to help someone whose primary language wasn't English, I had to implement the tactics of shaping, modeling, repetition, and elaboration. And so just as task analysis had made the exercise more manageable, modeling the activity also allowed my tutee to adopt some of these techniques for herself. And through repeated usage, these techniques became honed, sharpened, and so from there, she even began to synthesize former knowledge from class materials with new concepts being learned in English, the new language. And so there were also even times where her working memory appeared to be preoccupying itself fully with the process of word retrieval in order to better produce what she was receiving and comprehending. And so that was a truly remarkable thing. And early on in our sessions, we found that reinforcement was a lot more regular. However, as time progressed and a student's proficiency and confidence grew, he would be able to monitor himself better. And so consequently, he would begin to display a tendency to initiate work on new problems, and even without preceding guidance with that regard. And so that was a wonderful thing as well. And in conjunction, really in perfect alignment with the constructivist view of learning, students took a very active role in their education, and they also benefited greatly from constructing this new knowledge within a social setting, being with people, being able to have intimate conversations about the thought processes going on in their minds. And so by helping students foster this sense of self-efficacy, we in turn were able to manifest some efficacy of our own as prospective educators approaching the field. And so it was a truly wonderful experience, providing great skills and memories. And it was a really wonderful thing, and I'm sure, Silas, you would agree.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So I think Mike talked a lot about great qualities that an educator has, and with these students, we saw some of those qualities that have been put onto them and how it affected their cognitive development through motivation and risk-taking. The first example I want to use is a 10th grader who came in looking for help on her chemistry project. This girl was in a chemistry class, and the goal of the project was to create a presentation where about the different where she would instruct her or educate her fellow classmates on the different phases of matter and how those phases of matter transition from one to another. And I sat down with her and I talked to her for a little bit, had her explain the assignment to me, and it was clear that she had obviously understood it and was obviously very bright and grasped the concept very well. So it was clear that she was intrinsically motivated. She wanted to come in and learn from me and work with me and Mike and Aysha to become better at chemistry and to understand the concept better. And she was not just oriented or not just motivated to complete this assignment because the teacher said to. She obviously had a will to go above and beyond and explore concepts of chemistry that her teacher may not have expressly or specifically talked about during class. So we did some research. We found some new, some different phases of matter and ways matter change that were a little bit more advanced than you would find in a 10th grade chemistry class, and she was able to incorporate those into her presentation. And I think through that she felt that she was validated in her yearning to go above and beyond in her will to learn. And then in a second example is we saw a student who was a little more extrinsically motivated. It was a 6th grader who came in looking for help on geometry. I think you guys remember her, right?
Yeah.
And I sat down with her and we just kind of worked through the problems. I helped her figure it out, and I kind of prodded her, and with you guys' help we got her to start talking a little bit, and Julie was really great at that as well. And she started talking a little bit and she opened up, which I think was a big risk for her. She appeared pretty nervous when she came in, and she probably was nervous about having to ask for help on this homework, and that's why she didn't really want to talk about it. It was more of at first I just sat there and was like, okay, I read the problem, and then she was like, why don't you try it? She tried it. And then towards the end, she was talking with me about the problems. She would ask okay, so da-da-da-da-da, if I do this, then that, stuff like that. Until finally we got to a problem none of us could figure out, right? Yeah. And so we couldn't figure it out, Julie couldn't figure it out, and we tried to advocate for her that it was totally cool not to know the answer to something, and that it was a healthy risk to go to your your teacher the next day and ask, hey, how can I solve this one? And hopefully they would give her an answer that she could understand. And with that, we wanted to build that base for positive cognitive development and a healthy risk that could lead to someone like the 10th grader we talked about who was intrinsically motivated to learn and step from the extrinsic motivation to learn extrinsic motivation just to complete this assignment and get the grade to more of complete this assignment, learn the material, and kind of enjoy it so you can keep using it in the next stages of your development in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through all of our experiences, we saw a lot of that. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys want to add anything before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it. I think
Okay.
you hit all of the points.
Awesome. Yeah, so even though there were a low amount of students at the Winooski Library for tutoring, we still felt as if the ones who came, we gained a lot of experience, and we hope we could help them with their homework and be great educators for them. And I think we're all looking forward to next semester when we get to go into the public schools and do a little more with more students. So thank you guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks.